What's going on, guys? This is Mr. Teej66's movie reviews. I am Mr. Teej66. Well, the latest Rambo film, Last Blood, coming out on Friday, I thought I'd go back and take a look at the original that started it all, 1982's First Blood, or Rambo First Blood, whichever. There's alternative titles, it seems, for some of these movies. But anyway, if you've never seen this movie, wow, I don't know where you've been. But anyway, it's about John Rambo, a former Vietnam vet who's come back from the war. He's just sort of wandering, aimlessly, probably suffering from post-traumatic stress. He goes into a small town in, I think it's the Pacific Northwest. They never say exactly where, and he encounters a bigoted redneck sheriff who just doesn't like him by the look of him. Tries to run him out of town. He decides, nope, I'm going to go back into town. He's arrested, harassed by the local sheriff's department, snaps, and goes on the run, and that's really it. The whole movie's basically one big chase. Now, this movie is definitely the best of the Rambo films. I mean, there's absolutely no question about that. It's more of a survival thriller, I'd say, than... There's action moments, but I don't really... Parts of it become a balls-out action movie, but a lot of it's a survival thriller, and a fantastic one at that. Stallone is great. This is one of his best acting performances. I would almost say an Oscar nomination would have been warranted here. He didn't get one, but I think he should have. He has very few lines of dialogue. I think he has about 25 lines in the entire film, and that carries through all the Rambo films. He's not a guy who speaks very much, but he does a lot of it with his facial expressions, his body language. He suggests sort of at the beginning of the film, he's almost kind of, shy, quiet, reserved. You would never think this guy was threatening in any way, but when he turns, boom, it is just goes into pure warrior mode, and it is something to behold. Brian Dennehy is also excellent as the villain Teasel. Just a bastard, a small town redneck sheriff that you just hate. You loathe him. Although, watching the film the last time, I don't want to say I kind of sympathize with him, but I kind of understand where he's coming from. This guy comes into town, he has no idea who he is, and maybe his method of, dealing with him is not the best way, but I kind of maybe sort of slightly see where he's coming from. Not enough to, condone his actions or to not like him, but he's okay. The only other major cast member is Richard Crenna, playing Troutman, who was Rambo's commander during the Vietnam War. He's awesome. He just has this big, over-the-top, delivery. Rambo! And he has probably some of the best lines in the film where he goes, God didn't make him. They go, God didn't make Rambo. I did. And it's like, you better do one thing. What's that? Keep a fresh supply of body bags. Oh, that's great. Just great dialogue. The action scenes, are competent, are very well filmed. There's some great explosions at the end, when Rambo goes back into the small town and starts, blowing up gas stations, destroying the police station with his big gun. I mean, it's freaking awesome. There's a great chase sequence with a army tank. Just awesome stuff, but still, realistic. I think that's why this movie is considered the best of the series, because it's definitely more realistic than some of the other Rambo films, which I love them, but they are cartoons. They're comic books. They're just so overblown and ridiculous that it's just hysterical. This one, by contrast, is more grounded. It's more realistic. There's a few parts which stretch credibility a little much, but for the most part, it's more psychologically, interesting than the later films. Maybe with the exception of the last film, Rambo, from 2008. Watching the film again, after all these years, I'm sure when it first came out, people were all like, rah, rah, yeah, Rambo, go get him, Now it kind of plays a little bit, we have a lot of these, shootings going on, and people just snapping and killing people, that it's kind of disturbing, because he, at first he's sort of justified. These deputies have fucked with him. They not quite torture him, but they treat him like, an animal. And, when he starts maiming them, it's like, all right, maybe I can kind of understand where they're coming from. But when he starts going into town and starts blowing up gas stations and, firing into, buildings and stuff, he's starting to, terrorize innocent people that have done nothing to him. And it reminds me of all these, shootings that are going on today. He doesn't actually kill anybody. he doesn't actually kill anybody, but nevertheless, he's causing destruction and, basically a terrorist, sort of. And it's a little more disturbing. That's another thing I like about this film. It's been documented in many other reviews, and I'm sure many other reviews will say it, but Rambo doesn't actually kill really anyone in the entire film. He maims the deputies and everything like that, and blows shit up, but he never kills anybody. The only guy who dies is sort of ambiguous because he's in a helicopter. He's one of those deputies that really was torturing Rambo. Takes off his safety vest when he's in a helicopter trying to shoot at him, and Rambo takes a rock, throws it, hits the windshield of the helicopter. The guy, the pilot, jerks, and the deputy falls out of the helicopter. It's a little ambiguous whether Rambo was trying to kill him or just, what he was doing. There's also another scene where he's in the army tank and he smashes it into a police car and the car flips over, and it's never really said if those two cops died. So again, a little ambiguous. Even the deaths in this movie are very ambiguous. You're never really sure if, they're dead or not. As for negatives in this movie, another thing I have to mention, the cinematography. This movie was shot in a small town called called Hope, Canada. And man, it is dreary and depressing. Like, just everything looks wet and just miserable. Like, it's one of those towns where that, like, a lot of the people who live there want to get the hell out of there because it's just depressing to look at. Man, kudos for the cinematography. The wood scenes are also very good. As for negatives, I only have a couple, really. There's a few parts which are a little unrealistic, go against the grounded reality of the movie. Like, there's a part where Rambo's hanging off a cliff, at least a couple 100 feet in the air, maybe even more than that. And he jumps off the cliff, goes into a tree, like free falls down the tree, and somehow doesn't break a bone or anything. That's a little unrealistic. It's a great stunt. It's very impressive. Someone actually did that, but it's a little much. Also, some of Stallone's acting toward the end gets a little ridiculous. It's been parodied 100 times. I can make the world protect me, spitting, going baby colors. Just the typical Stallone-isms. Like, I can't fucking think. There's a scene where he basically breaks down. When Trotman confronts him, and he breaks down. Says everything he's feeling. Some of Stallone's acting becomes a little comedic. I had a friend. We used to quote this movie all the time. That and so that's a little silly, but overall, that's really my only complaints with this movie. I love the sequels too, of course. They're big, dumb, stupid action movies, but this is the only one that really, it's serious and it takes a really interesting look at post-traumatic stress and how people who are marginalized in society snap, which is kind of what's happening nowadays. So I think the movie's aged very well in that regard. This is definitely a 9.5. This movie is still a classic. If you haven't seen it, absolutely check it out. Anyway, that's it for this week. This is Mr. T66, and I will see you next time.